2:36 in the morning. Fuck, it's gotta be Friday. Yeah, I checked the computer. It's Friday, 2:30 in the morning. Started recording this at Thursday, about 8 o'clock, and then I got distracted. Just pretty typical. Started doom scrolling Instagram and just became annoyed. But here we are. I rewrote a lot of the script. And I try to write it like I talk, because I seem to have a hard time focusing and getting things done. So here we are. I should have a video for this one, which I tried to set up for the last two, but I couldn't figure it out. So I went to trusty old YouTube and got this set up. So here we go. This is Act 3, the assembly. Every investigation, even one as small and as insignificant as this one, it has a moment when you stop asking the questions and you start chasing the answers. And for me, the answers started coming in the form of a Mississippi drawl crackling through a phone speaker. I think in the last episode I mentioned Carol Dixon. Well, Carol Dixon came through, and after a couple days of polite emails, playing voicemail phone tag, and I'll pass this along, it finally turned into the one thing that it hadn't had yet. And that was a real person with a badge on the other end of the line. I was standing in the middle of Kroger, and I was eyeballing the kale that had just been put out. For those that know me, I have a secret love affair with kale. I love it. So, this dude that works in produce, he's stacking out the kale. I'm watching him. And that kale is just sitting there glistening with dew that had just been laid down on its green stems by the mist machine in the produce cooler. You know the one. It squirts half the water on the vegetables. Squirts. I'm not sure that's the word I wanted to use. It sprays half of its water on the vegetables. The other half, it gets sprayed right in your face as you get too close. I was surrounded by people filling their carts with organic oat milk, free-range happy eggs, and grass-fed who gives two shits piled high on top of gluten-free bags of whatever Instagram says is healthy this week. I'm watching everyone take selfies in front of their haul and tagging hashtag I'm better than you or some shit like that. All the while they're hiding boxes of wine and bags of non-GMO Doritos under the cart. I'm annoyed tonight, if you can tell. But it was at that moment that the screen on my phone lit up with a phone from 662 area code. I got excited, and I answered it on the second ring. Lieutenant Sledge. He starts a conversation with this easy Mississippi drawl. And he calls me Mr. Dedrick. My name is Frederick Dedrick. And we don't pronounce it that way because it just sounds stupid, but it's been pronounced that way I don't know how many times in my life. Usually in a waiting room somewhere. The dentist, the doctor. Somebody would walk out and go, Frederick Dedrick? And I'd get up with my big gap teeth and say, yeah, that's me. I don't correct him anymore. So Lieutenant Sledge says, hello, Mr. Dedrick. This is Coahoma County Investigator Lieutenant Sledge. Man, tell me what's going on. I'd practiced this story in my head at least 100 times. For banks, for call centers, for customer service reps. Reading from scripts that didn't have a pre-written line for me. But this call, it was different. This was the first time I'd been invited to tell the story. And instead of me forcing it into the ears of a call center rep who's just waiting for me to stop talking so they could get on with their script. Oh, I'm sorry that our experience... Excuse me, let me edit that part. Instead of me forcing the story into the ears of some call center rep who's just waiting for me to stop talking so they can get on with their script. Oh, I'm sorry that your experience has not met our expectations today. Is there anything else Yeah, let me start over again. Good Lord, it's 2:42 in the morning now. I'm beat, but I have coffee or beer. Whatever you think's in the mug is in the mug. Instead of me forcing it into the ears of a call center rep who's just waiting for me to stop talking so they could get on with their script. Oh, I'm sorry that your experience has not met your expectations today. Is there anything else I can do to assist you? Let me transfer you to someone else who really doesn't care. Well, this call, this time, it was different. Lieutenant Sledge wanted to hear it, and his job wasn't to get me through to the please hold for a survey on our service today. His job is to actually do something about it. So I walked out of Kroger, I got in my truck, I slid into the front seat, and I pulled my binder into my lap, and I flipped it open to Exhibit 1. And I started from the beginning. So here I am on the phone. Okay, so Lieutenant Sledge. Lieutenant Sledge is a cool name, by the way. If I were a lieutenant, I would want my name to be Sledge. I say, okay, so Lieutenant, it started with 3 micro deposits on October 17th, 2 cents, 11 cents, minus 13 cents. From a credit union I'd never heard of, Red River. And the lieutenant goes, go on. I walked him through every beat. The micro deposits, the $2,000 hit, the second attempt at the credit union return, the IC3 complaint, the civil case that I just filed to unlock a subpoena, the records and phone calls from Red River, and the name that kept popping up where it shouldn't, Sharia Pfizer. And every time I paused, waiting for disbelief, all I got back was a low, the sound of somebody taking notes with real ink on real paper. So Lieutenant Sledge says, he says it like this, he's like, so you're in Ohio, your business account gets hit out of Clarksdale, and you figure all this shit out yourself. You got no attorney? I said, no, I don't have an attorney. I just got Google, a real pissed off attitude, and way too much caffeine. There was a short silence after that, and it wasn't the silence where he had checked out. It was more like he was lining this up in his head. And right there, during that pause, I felt the shift. This wasn't a customer service ticket anymore. This was a case. So Sledge says, all right, man, you ain't crazy. Well, you might be a little bit crazy. But this shit definitely looks like fraud to me. And damn, man, you damn done near the whole case. I ain't got to do nothing but put a rubber stamp on it. But he goes, look, Fred, man, you got to come down here and sign these affidavits, man. I got to be able to look you in the eye and swear you in that you're telling the truth. And you got to bring me everything you have. Lieutenant Sledge, Coahoma County Sheriff's Office. You could hear the weight in his voice, like a man who's seen too many excuses and not enough evidence. He didn't promise justice, but what he did promise was process. And sometimes that's all you need. So I filled my mugs, I filled my truck, and then I sat there for a second. I had my hand on the key, coffee steaming in cup holders, a thermos on the dash, and a fresh poured cup right in my crotch, thinking about what the hell I was actually doing. I was about to drive 11 hours and 29 minutes, 755 miles, to sign 2 pieces of paper. When something takes from you, your work, your time, your name, you don't measure distance anymore. You measure conviction. It rained the whole way down. It was that long, steady rain that does not let you forget that you're moving through it. Every couple hours, I think about stopping for a minute. Every few hours, I'd think about stopping for a minute, maybe stretch my legs, or refill my mugs with some shady gas station coffee. The kind that tastes like rubber and cardboard, but it keeps your eyes open. My Iron Bean reserves were getting low. The highway, the truckers, the neon lights, 100 reflections on the wet pavement. The whole time I thought about Sharia and what her day might have looked like. I wondered, had she been served her summons yet? Was she scrolling on her phone? Was she laughing with her friends? Did she even know what she had set in motion? There's something about night driving that makes the world small. It's just you, your thoughts, and whatever you're chasing. And I wasn't chasing money anymore. I was chasing proof that effort still mattered. That doing the right thing wasn't outdated. That maybe somewhere, someone like Sledge still believed that a signature and a handshake could make things right. Around mile 400, I started narrating it to myself, not like a victim, but like a witness. Like maybe one day, someone would need to know how far you have to drive to be believed. I left Ohio, drove through Kentucky, and I crossed into Tennessee a few hours after dawn. The clouds hung low. It was beautiful. Orange light just bled through them, like rust through tissue paper. The roadsides changed. Nashville, Memphis, Jackson, Tanika, and then Clarksdale. They were names that sounded like blues and trouble. You don't feel brave on a trip like that. You just feel necessary. Like a delivery truck for your own integrity. I pulled into Clarksdale about 3 p.m. on Saturday. The rain was still falling. It was thick now, and it was hot down there, despite it being October. And southern rain, it smelled down there like earth and diesel. And the courthouse I pulled up to, it stood there like it'd seen 1,000 storms, and it didn't care to move for this one. Lieutenant Sledge met me at the entrance. He was broad-shouldered, a big man. He had tired eyes. He had a clipboard in his hand. He was there on a Saturday. On his day off, when we were on the phone, he agreed to meet me. Because it was the only day I had to get down there. I had to work, you see. So, he hooked me up, I suppose. He looked like a man that he'd seen or heard too many bad stories, but he was still willing to hear one more. He didn't waste his words. There wasn't no small talk like, how was your drive? He already knew. I texted him an update and a screenshot of the GPS about every hour on the way down, and I was pretending that I was keeping him updated. But subconsciously, I was afraid he wasn't going to show up. I'd been dismissed so many times at this point. So every time I take a screenshot of my GPS and let him know how many miles away or how many hours away or how many minutes away I was, I just wanted to let him know I was coming. And I was serious about this and to please be there. He didn't answer the first few texts, and maybe it was too early. But once I was about 4 hours out, he did respond. He said, "I'll see you soon, man." So I pull in. He gives me a nod of the head, and then he gives me a bro hug, like we just watched a game last night. If nothing else, I felt welcome at this point. The only thing he says to me is, "Let's get you sworn in." So I followed him into the courthouse. The hallway, it smelled like dust, old paper, smelled like rain off people's jackets. There was that buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. There was a soft, miserable hum that every government building seems to be built with. It's like the theme song for bureaucracy and red tape. Inside his office, the air was cold. It was like the walls hadn't thawed since the 70s. Filing cabinets along every wall. He had a state flag. It was drooping in the corner. There was awards and certificates adorning the wall in no specific pattern. Some were from 1999, some from 2013, 2012, School Resource Officer, Investigator of the Year, interrogation training, certificates of all kind. In the middle of the room, there was a desk, and it was buried under case files that weren't mine. He set a thin stack of papers in front of me, and I slid mine across his desk. He flipped through the pages I laid out in chronological order of the events as they had happened up to this point. And then he flipped on a camera, a body cam, set it on the desk with a practice thumb, and the little red light came alive. And he says, "All right, man, raise your right hand for me." My hand goes up, my left hand over my heart. Coffee jitters and adrenaline are now doing like a slow drum roll in my chest. And he read it off like he'd done this 1,000 times. He says, "Do you swear this statement is true, to the best of your knowledge and belief?" And I said, "I do." He asked me to tell the story one more time for the video interview. And just like that, weeks of being brushed off and passed around turned into something permanent. Into ink. Into record. He slid 2 pieces of paper across the only open space that was left on his desk. One affidavit for grand theft and one for wire fraud. 2 crimes that until that moment had just been a nightmare in my bank app. When it was done, Sledge leaned back. He nodded slow. The kind of nod that says you did your part. I shook his hand. I thanked him. And then I stepped outside into the rain. And there it was. The Red River Credit Union branch in Clarksdale, Mississippi was right across the street. It was the place where it all started. I stood there for a long second. And then, in a very petty move, I pulled out my phone and I took a selfie right there with the bank behind me. And then I got in my truck. I sat for a minute watching the raindrops race down my windshield, thinking just how strange justice looked from this Clarksdale parking lot. And then I did the only thing that was left to do. I drove home. 11 hours back. No radio. Just a bunch of true crime podcasts. Rain. And relief.
On October 25th, 2025, Dedrick drove from Toledo, Ohio to Clarksdale, Mississippi, where he met with Lieutenant Sledge of the Coahoma County Sheriff's Office. 2 sworn affidavits were executed under oath, one for grand theft, one for wire fraud, formally initiating the cross-state criminal investigation into suspect Sharia Pfizer.
The papers were signed, the miles were driven, the case was moving. But as I learned soon enough, signatures don't stop storms. They just tell you where the lightning struck first. Justice has a long fuse, and I just lit it. I got home sometime late on Sunday. I parked the truck, I walked inside. Everything looked exactly the same, but nothing felt the same. And I slept. I slept like I'd been unplugged. Long, heavy, dreamless. It's the kind of sleep you only earn with miles and stubbornness. And when I woke up, it was quiet. The Ohio sky was gray outside, as it usually is. The coffee roaster was idle. My inbox was full. Mississippi was 755 miles behind me, but the case I'd sworn to was sitting right there on my desk, waiting to be assembled. Here's the thing about truth. It doesn't organize itself. It doesn't walk into court. It doesn't staple itself to a complaint. It doesn't politely label its own folder, Exhibit A. Left alone, it just sprawls. Across inboxes and spam folders. Across screenshots you meant to sort later. Across PDFs you downloaded 3 times with 4 different file names. Across little furious notes you typed to yourself at 3 a.m. so you wouldn't forget the one detail that no one really cares about. I built my own system. Something pretending to be one. Folders inside folders, subfolders that only made sense to me, names, dates, and exhibit numbers. Like I was reverse engineering a case file the bank should have built in the first place. Exhibit 1, micro deposits, October 17th. 2 cents, 11 minus 13. You've heard this a million times already. It was the nothing that started everything. Exhibit 2, 200,000. God, I would have died. A $2,000 ACH withdrawal, October 21st. That was the moment they stopped testing the fence and actually climbed over it. Exhibit 3, the returned second attempt, October 22nd. The bank system finally coughing. Why did I write that? The bank's systems finally coughing once, like they'd noticed something rotten. That's why I wrote that. That sounds good, wouldn't you? Read the whole sentence. Let me start over. The bank system finally coughing once, like they'd noticed something rotten, but only after my account took the hit. Exhibit 4, the IC3 complaint, October 23rd. The federal "we'll get back to you" portal, where you file your panic into a box and you hope that somebody opens it. October 24th was Exhibit 5, the civil case filing. It was me suing a stranger in another state. But not for money. I just needed to get a piece of paper with the word subpoena on it. Exhibit 6, my newly acquired affidavits, October 25th. My signature on sworn statements and affidavits. Ink was shaking just a little from coffee and rage. And by the time I was done, you could almost hear the case starting to breathe as each piece clicked into place. My office started looking less like a coffee roastery back room and more like a budget FBI annex, without the photos and weird yarn on the walls. I'd color-coded tabs. They were marching down the binder like rank-and-file soldiers. I had handwritten labels getting smaller as I ran out of space on the stickers. Highlighters that bled fluorescent intent all over the margins. Yellow for fact, pink for bullshit, green for someone's lying here. The smell of coffee and printer toner fills the room. UPS boxes shoved to the side to make room for these binders. Most people think justice shows up in a uniform, with a badge and a gun, a squad car with the lights blazing. But sometimes it's just a pissed off coffee slinger wearing a flannel, sitting under a cheap desk lamp at midnight, surrounded by binders and browser tabs, with way too many sticky notes, trying to turn chaos into a story that a judge can't ignore.
Between October 24th and October 29th, 2025, Dedrick compiled a structured evidence portfolio. Bank statements, screenshot archives, social media links, text message threads, and sworn affidavits, all organized chronologically and cross-referenced by institution and individual. This portfolio would later be transmitted to Coahoma County authorities and serve as the backbone of the criminal file against Sharia Simone Pfizer.
And then there were the emails. If the affidavits were the skeleton, the emails were the nerves. First, Carol Dixon. She'd already been the first person in Mississippi to treat me like a human being instead of a case number, and her earlier message played back in my head. It was a pleasure speaking with you on the phone today. I've spoken to the sheriff. He's directed that someone from our department reach out to you in the next week. That wasn't just courtesy, that was a bridge. And I wrote back to her again and again. I laid it all out. I showed her the affidavits. I mentioned my drive, all the email attachments, the timelines. I apologized for being annoying, but because she was the only person that listened to me in the beginning, I wanted to share the story with her. She wrote back to me, "Sir, you are certainly not annoying, and thank you so much for your time and effort. I truly appreciate it." And then the important part. I've spoken to the sheriff, and he's directed that Lieutenant Sledge is going to take care of you this week. That someone was the turning point, that Lieutenant Sledge, but Carol was the one that opened the door, and she kept it open with her own name. But meanwhile, a certain person at Red River Federal Credit Union kept feeding oxygen into the case from the financial side. We'll call her Melissa. Melissa wrote, before I went down there, so many wheels were turning at the same time. And I can only tell the story one timeline at a time. But working with Melissa at Red River, she wrote, "We'll be happy to work with them, Coahoma County Sheriff's Department, on any request that they may have. I've attached a hold harmless indemnification agreement. If your financial institution will complete it and return it to me, I'll make sure our end is taken care of." And by that, she meant she would reverse the charges and send me my money back. And in another message, she says, "Laugh out loud, you're all good. Just be prepared." This is when I told her I was heading down there. She says, "Laugh out loud, you're all good. Just be prepared. Clarksdale is a very small rural community, and they are not tremendously welcoming to outsiders. Clarksdale Police Department may be less than ideal to work with." And she was right about that. She said, "Feel free to mention our credit union's name and let them know that we're working with you." That was a big help.
Working in parallel, Red River ensured the suspect's account was frozen, documented the admission made in branch, and prepared to release transactional records pending indemnification from Fifth Third Bank. At the same time, Carol Dixon and Lieutenant Sledge coordinated on the law enforcement side, one building the path, the other preparing to walk it.
When the vice president of fraud at a credit union tells you that the local PD might be less than ideal, you know you're wandering into an episode of something. I kept thinking about something I'd emailed Melissa during my drive. When I was talking to Melissa on the phone, I didn't have this in an email, but when I talked to her on the phone, she let me know that when Sharia's accounts were frozen, she came into that Red River Federal Credit Union Bank in Clarksdale to talk to somebody. But her accounts were frozen. She couldn't make any more transfers. And the bank tried to do her a favor. She was $4,000 negative. When I talked to Melissa on the phone, she told me a story about how Sharia had come to the bank to try to figure out why her account was frozen. She couldn't make any more transfers out of it. And while she was there at the bank cut her a deal. And they said, "If you bring us the money back to the teller's desk or an ATM deposit or send it back via Apple Pay, we won't press charges." And she agreed. Sharia agreed that that was a good deal, and she left the bank that day. And Melissa was very confident that that money was going to be returned at some point during that day. It wasn't. But I got to thinking, if her confession and making the agreement at Red River that morning on closed circuit camera was available to the police department, that it may be more compelling if she ends up denying to the police that she did anything wrong. And if she does return the money as agreed, that would show some accountability, and it would further cement her actions as being illegal in the first place. The beauty of the internet is that there is an objective, unchangeable record. And that's what this whole phase was about. Turning outrage into an unchangeable record, taking feelings and forging them into facts with timestamps. By now, my desktop was a constellation. Each folder was a star. Click into one, and it opened up a galaxy of evidence. Screenshots of bank portals, photos of civil summons, social media captures tying Rebecca Banks to Sharia Pfizer. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was documenting.
By October 28th, 2025, a full narrative arc existed in the digital record. 1. Account access and verification. 2. Unauthorized transfer. 3. Attempted second withdrawal and return. 4. Admission by the suspect at Red River. 5. Civil suit filed. 6. Affidavits executed in person. All that remained was law enforcement action.
Everything that's happened so far I owe to Carol Dixon. Her voice and her willing to listen, it changed the entire temperature of my whole experience. I still remember her voice saying, "Good morning. I've spoken to the sheriff. He directed that someone from our department will reach out to you. And Lieutenant Sledge has been assigned to the case, and he will now be your primary point of contact." That was bureaucratic language for the case is real now. It's not just in your app. It's not just in your inbox. It's in the system. And that's what the assembly really was. Not just papers and binders, but people in alignment. The fraud VP in Texas, an administrative assistant in Coahoma County, a lieutenant with a warrant in his future, and a stubborn coffee roaster in Ohio who refused to let $2,000 be written off as too bad, so sad. At this point in the timeline, the story could stand up without me. If I disappeared tomorrow, this case would still walk itself into the courtroom, printed, hole punched, tabbed, and ready to swear under oath. Act 1 was the spark. Those stupid little microdeposits nobody was supposed to notice. Act 2 was the breach. And that was the moment the fence got tested and then jumped. Act 3, what you're listening to now, the assembly, every screenshot, every email, every timestamp, stacked in order like dominoes begging to be pushed. Then the drive, 11 hours of highway, tumbler after tumbler of Iron Bean coffee, and a stranger's name that kept getting sharper in my mind with every mile. The affidavits, my anger, my voice, my effort, it was all frozen in ink. And by now, I wasn't just telling a story anymore. I was keeping my hands on the wheel, my foot on the gas, and letting the evidence move on its own. Everything was ready. All that was left was impact. So here we are at the end of Act 3, the assembly. And now the board is set for Act 4, the confrontation, where the pieces really begin to fall into place. Sharia starts to panic, and we get one step closer.